Shoprite, that's the largest of the lot here in Sub-Saharan Africa. Founded by Christo Visa and Whitey Basson back in the 1970s in the Western Cape. They saw a couple of stores that were for sale. It's grown to a group with 1,730 stores around the region. And by the region, I mean everywhere from here all the way up into regions like Nigeria and the likes. Market cap of around 100 billion rand. There you go. It's previously a little higher than that, but that's a big, fat, round number, big enough to get them in the Allsy 40. Price to earnings ratio 27.3. Dividend yield of 1.5. Daniel, I mean, that really tells the story we were talking about a minute ago. 5-year track record looks spectacular. Peaks out there above 200 Rand a share. Looking a little bit shot here. Falls off a little bit in the beginning of this year because the trading update doesn't look so good. Followed by earnings where there were issues. I mean, a bit of dilution of extra shares and issues, so on and so forth. But it does seem to be stabilizing around about here. What's your most recent view on Shoprite?
So look, that pullback was long overdue. I think all the retailers had a bit of a difficult December that they all expected to be a bit better, and it didn't actually turn out as good as they expected. I think that shocked quite a few investors, maybe made them realize that those tailwinds that we were discussing aren't in place at the moment. The share price has pulled back to a more reasonable valuation, although I'd say it's still looking a bit expensive at this point.
Okay, but by reasonable, for a stock of this nature, 100 billion rand, that's a fair number of dollars. I mean, you're then in the league where you're comparing these guys to some of the other global choices that they have. Walmart, Mexico comes to mind. You know, some of the other comparable country retailers, larger of best of breed, you know, in Brazil and Indonesia and those sorts of companies. My understanding is those guys trade on roughly similar price to earnings ratios because there's nothing that attracts the global investor more than a secular growth story in the emerging markets, emerging middle class, yada yada. They like that stuff.
Yes.
They like the fact that they come and they see somebody like Whitey Basson and Christo Visa, these guys knocking around. They've been very good with in-store technology and with distribution centers and all of that stuff. So what's not to like? They know Africa is the growth story of the next, 25 years or whatever. So they're prepared to pay those multiples. I don't see why now it's any worse off than it was a couple of months ago. I mean, do you see them having earnings basically declining from here or a slightly lower rate of earnings growth? I mean, what are we looking at?
I'd say more the latter, a slightly lower rate of earnings growth. Look, if I had to put on the foreigner's goggles for a moment and look at the international landscape, you'd be comparing the bottom line earnings growth numbers across the geographies. Now, those can either grow from the top line revenue growing, so you're just selling more things to more people who've got more buying capacity, or you are increasing your efficiencies within the business. So even if the top line isn't growing as strongly, you can raise your margins by simply doing things better or more efficiently or at a lower cost. So my guess would be that guys are concerned that you are not going to have that revenue growth tailwind because of the structural problems facing the consumer, and that possibly the operational efficiencies are reaching their peak now, with Shoprite's margins being at quite a significantly high level and possibly less room for those margins to expand. So perhaps the guys are now looking at the international landscape and saying, okay, the earnings have grown very nicely, but now we're worried about the revenue growth, we're worried about margins expanding more, maybe they'll slow down a bit more, and maybe these guys here will carry on growing well.
Because each of these countries and regions have different story. Mexico is doing well because oil revenues are high. Indonesia is doing well because tourism revenues are good. South Africa is looking a bit wobbly because, mineral exports have been a bit weak. But, it's a ongoing, evolving story. I mean, what attracts people about the Africa outside of South Africa story is that they know that the retail there in these countries is shocking. They don't have malls yet, that people are busy buying stuff on the side of the road. So the opportunity to go in and professionalize that sector in conjunction with property developers and mall developers must be huge and substantial. I guess the question really is, what do you pay for that growth story?
But also, like you say, the opportunity is the risk. I mean, you have to go and build a number of malls. You have to move the guys inside there. You have to set up the infrastructure. You have to set up the supply chain. I mean, that can take a significant amount of time. I mean, Shoprite's been in Africa for a good number of years now, and I think it's still below 10% of their operating income.
And Whitey would love to go there faster, but what he says is that there just aren't, places to go into and put up big spanking new stores.
There aren't shopping malls sitting around waiting for a Shoprite. You have to build them. You have to build the roads. You have to. I mean, we're talking multi-year strategies, and perhaps also the guys have realised exactly how long the strategy needs to play out, and they're pulling back slightly.
So there's a global headwind, there's also local factors. Okay, I mean, I know we've got a lot of stocks to talk about here. So as far as Shoprite's concerned, it sounds more like it's a price issue. And the question is, have they reached a level at which they're beginning to add value or offer value again? So where are you going to come down on this one?
So I'd say definitely it's a price issue. I think Whitey is a superb operator. I mean, you can just see from the results, he's done superbly with the top of his game. He's done superbly with the business over the last couple of years. I'm still a bit concerned about the valuation. So I'd say it's still a bit expensive for me at this point.
Okay,
and so not.
I'm going to go with hot.